Okay, this is going to be a fun one. This is the Blizzard Games tier list. Let's get right into it. And there's a couple caveats. You might be wondering, why are there a few things placed already? DM, did you start the video halfway through? No. So a couple caveats first. Didn't play these ones, Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, as well as Starcraft. I was playing Command & Conquer. That was my RTS of choice. So I skipped all of them. Unfortunately, I would have zero opinion on those because I didn't play them. Now, the original Diablo, same thing. Wasn't really playing these types of games at that type of time, and we were a fairly religious household, so a game named Diablo wasn't going to sneak its way into there. So I didn't really get to play that one. Now, Diablo 2, I did play some of, but I only played it halfway, and that was only because everyone always told me it was one of the goated games of all time, which is part of the reason it's on the S tier list. We'll talk about that for a moment. And I actually played through it. It was a little boring for me towards the middle, not because I think it's a bad game, but it was just, I didn't get to play it when it was absolutely goated. You know what I mean? And I played the remastered, and it just felt like, yeah, I can see why people like this, but this is an old game. And I can understand the same way that people who play RuneScape nowadays who never played it before, I think they might experience the same thing. RuneScape is my favorite game of all time. Like literally hands down, it beats the bricks off any other game for me. I love it. I feel emotionally attached to it. I have a million actual, like I've got party hat on the wall. I've got a Herblore 99 skill cape. My keychain for my keys is an obsidian cape. Like I'm just really into RuneScape. And I feel like if people were trying to play the game nowadays, I would tell you it's an amazing game and you should play it. But then you're going to play it. You're probably going to hate it because you have to kind of have you experience the game in the beginning, I think, is the same type of way I feel about Diablo 2. But because of that, I'm giving it an S tier ranking because enough people say the game is good enough that I choose to believe them. Because there's a lot of names that I really respect that really have good opinions that the game is fantastic. And for that reason, I'm going to put it at S tier because I'm like, you know what? It probably is. I just didn't play it enough to understand. But that does leave us with ones that I do have opinions actually on, which is where this list is going to start to get interesting. I'm going to kind of pick my way through these here, but I think I'm going to go, and you know what? Let's start with Hearthstone. I think Hearthstone is A tier. The only reason I'm not putting it in S tier is that I like the game a lot, but the cards, there's so many new ones so often that it felt difficult for me to like constantly keep up with the changes in meta. And then you just get like a card you like, and then maybe it rotates out into the, the standard or whatever, where you can't really use it as much anymore, etc. So I feel like some of the decks that I used to like back in the day, because I played it back when the highest rank was like platinum with 3 stars or whatever it was. And it was early access. And I used to actually watch Crip every single day for like a year straight. So I would get dinner and I would watch Crip. And that was at 7 p.m. my time. He would basically always go live. And so for it was like a year straight, I watched him play Hearthstone. And that was really fun because he'd play Arena and stuff too. And Arena was the most fun out of any of the game modes for me. That's why I played the most. I actually don't even know if I ever even hit Legend in the game, even though I played for years, because I basically spent the majority of my time playing Arena. That's just part of what I found fun. Sort of the dopamine aspect of grabbing all of the different cards. So on to the next PC game here. So Heroes of the Storm for me, I feel like B would be fair, but I actually want to give it A tier as well, specifically because I really like MOBAs. And Heroes of the Storm felt like a very easy entry-level MOBA to understand, but felt like it also could be complicated enough that you could get good at it. But specifically the reason it's an A tier, that wouldn't be enough if it was just any MOBA. It would actually be, in my opinion, B tier if we're just comparing it MOBA to MOBA. But it has this almost multiverses, if you remember that game, level of relatability where the heroes in the game are somebody that you've probably played other games in. So it gives it like this extra layer of being fun and interesting because you get to play as like Diablo or like, a Starcraft character. And so for me, I think that's fantastic. You get to play with World of Warcraft characters and all this type of stuff. And so I love it when the game gives you that chance where it's like, oh, you get to play as the Hulk or some big major IP that you like. And this is one of those first games that really does that. I mean, we have Hearthstone, which I also think is A tier, and that's part of that too, where you can have some of the heroes in some of the cards, but you're not like playing as the character. You're playing a card that is the character. Whereas Heroes of the Storm, you're literally, Diablo himself or whatever it may be. So for me, it gets a bonus tier almost for that reason. Maybe it's a stupid reason, but I like it. Now, Overwatch, I think the original Overwatch, I want to play an A tier as well because I actually really like Overwatch. I think Overwatch is... Well, I like competitive 5-man games. I think those are interesting. Normally, I'm not like a huge competitive guy. I don't normally feel very competitive in games, but there's something about the 5v5 teamwork aspect of these types of games. Like I played League of Legends for years, that really interests me. And maybe it's the dynamic of timing off other people's moves. I really like team fights. I think team fights are a way more interesting dynamic than just like a 1v1, for instance. There's like all these other things to account for. And it's not just like CSGO or something where, it's just if you can dome me quicker, it's over. It kind of feels like Overwatch is slow paced enough that someone like me can like play a first person shooter and feel like I'm actually actively participating in it, which I kind of like. So it's actually A tier for me. Now Overwatch 2, I actually think Overwatch 2 is, which actually these are swapped. This is Overwatch and this is Overwatch 2. I actually think Overwatch 2 is B tier. The reason I say this is because one of which the thing they promised in the game, which is the PvE, I guess literally isn't coming anyway. And then while Overwatch 2 is technically a free upgrade and, better than, I think it's technically still better than Overwatch 1. For its time, I feel like it's not. Like it kind of was overhyped that it's going to be this big deal. And then you play it and it's basically like just less of the game the other one is. It's like, okay, well, now you have one less character. And I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it as much. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like when I was playing the game, I thought it was going to be more than it was, which it felt like a reskin of Overwatch or like a DLC. I felt like I got baited into playing Overwatch again. Honestly, that's what it was. It felt like, hey guys, play Overwatch 2. And so like I didn't play Overwatch in like a year. And so yeah, this is what it is. Now I'm starting to realize why I'm kind of feeling negative about it. I thought I was going to re-download the game. It's like I liked Overwatch. Now let's see what they have to offer. And guess what they have to offer? It's fucking Overwatch. So it's like I download, I'm like, it's this game again. Like I thought this was the 2, and it just didn't feel like a 2. It felt like, hey, come play the new patch, but we're gonna call it Overwatch 2 so that you fucking download the game again. So anyway, Starcraft 2 is S tier. I think Starcraft 2 is easy S tier for me. I think immediately I put it S tier. That is when I started playing the RTS a little bit, and it is legitimately one of the smoothest RTS games I've ever played. It feels, I don't want to say easy to understand, but intuitive to understand. It seems like it's very difficult actually to get quite good at the game. Shout out to my buddy Chosen, who's really good at this game. But it also felt to me accessible. Like I expected it to be something where I pick it up and it's like civilization level of confusing, but you can actually play the game and somewhat get to a somewhat decent level, at a somewhat reasonable pace. And I actually enjoy that in an RTS specifically. And also the characters are appealing. Terran versus the Zerg versus the Protoss. They all distinctively have a really enjoyable theme. I really liked playing the Zerg. So for me, I appealed to that a lot. So for me, that's S tier. Diablo 3, I think, is going to be A tier for me. I liked it, legitimately thought it was a good game, liked playing it. But how to describe it? It has almost too much in game. My problem is, which is we talk about Diablo 4 here in just a moment, you'll see where I'm going with this. But this game is all in game. And by that, I mean by when you start the game, you're in game. So that was my issue with Diablo 3. I didn't actually necessarily even hate it when it was the end game. Like I actually kind of enjoyed the mindless grind. I played Whirlwind Barb and just spin to win, kind of fun. And you get enough loot that you get dopamine, but you get so much loot so quickly that it almost felt like, or I mean, nowadays you do. Back in the day, but not so much. Okay, so on release, this isn't exactly the same. It was slower paced in the beginning, but nowadays you get so much loot so quickly. That you almost become numb to it is how I felt by the end of it. So that when I left the game after playing it a while, admittedly, so that's part of the reason it's an A tier. I did play it a while. I was almost numb to the grind of the loot, and I didn't really care that much. So, but it was still really, it's still one of the best releases. I felt like I know it had some problems on release. Okay, yeah, I mean I get it, but for me, I'm thinking from an enjoyability aspect, it's one of the most enjoyable releases. Funny note, I was actually working at Best Buy when this game came out, and like everybody was playing this goddamn game. Okay. And this is, once again, we're going back to Crip here. This is where Crip really popped off, and watching him do the whole hardcore thing was really enjoyable as well. So there's actually 2 of these games in here that I identify with Crip, which is funny. So I guess I'm just a fan of the guy, but, Diablo 3 for me has good memories, is what I'm saying. A lot of coworkers played the game, and I just really liked it. You know, I really liked it a lot. So I think it's A tier. Maybe it could be B tier because this was the first time that they started doing the microtransaction thing and real money auction house and all that, which is part of the reason Morlo's not even on the list. I feel like I would have to mandatory just throw it in C. So I think it's implied that the pay to win is so strong in the game that it's hard to really give it a fair spot on these tier lists. Now, speaking of that, real quick about Hearthstone. Hearthstone doesn't really have pay to win. I feel like it's pay to acquire. It's a trading card game, or for whatever reason, that kind of gets away with. It gets away with the pay to win a little bit more than some of these other games where you have like a role playing game and you're just building a character stronger and stronger and stronger and you have an infinite power scale. For whatever reason, when I lost in Hearthstone, I almost never felt, oh, that guy wailed out and had the card. I just feel like, oh, I should have played around that card. And so for me, I really didn't mind spending the money in game as much as the other ones. Okay. So give Hearthstone a fair rating when it comes to that conversation. But Diablo 3 had the real auction house, which obviously had some problems related to it as well. But so anyway, I think A tier is fair though for that. Diablo 4. Now, this is where we're going to get hard, okay, with this. I think that I want to say it's S tier, but I think that's cope. I think if I give it S tier, then I'm only doing it because I'm in the hype of it now. I think there is some legitimate problems with Diablo 4. I think that the in-game, I agree with other people, that the in-game is not as strong as you would like it to be. I do think that when I'm acquiring items, I get bored of picking up items quicker than I would have thought, which is a similar problem I had in Diablo 3, but for other reasons. You see, in Diablo 3, you get to the end game so soon that you didn't have much of the beginning game, okay? But the end game is full of lots of loot. So because you get the end game so quickly, the lots of loot shows up so fast that you get overwhelmed with dopamine. Diablo 4 has a different problem, which is that when the loot is dropped, it's so unappealing that you actually are starved from dopamine. Even though you're flooded with so much stuff, your stash is literally full all the time anyway, okay, which is highly annoying. Rax has actually a good video on this I recommend watching because he kind of complains about the same thing, that the stuff you're getting doesn't even feel good to acquire unless we're talking one of the super rare uniques. And so for that reason, I feel like they almost have the same problem, but different, which is the in-game loot doesn't feel as appealing. From either you get overwhelmed in numb aspect or from you get starved it because all of the loot feels bad in Diablo 4. And so because they have the same reason, but I am enjoying the game on launch, I feel like a pretty decent amount both. I think it's fair to say it stays in A tier, which now that I look at this list makes me think I have a lot of things in A tier, and I'm glad World of Warcraft is an easy S tier that I don't even have to think about, because World of Warcraft, from the Burning Crusade going into Wrath of the Lich King and then Cataclysm, Mist of Pandaria, all these expansions, those were the ones I played and remember the most because I think it had played like the full vanilla. It was right when Burning Crusades came out, was when the hype of that was when they really sucked me in. These are some of my peak gaming memories. I think this is probably true for a lot of people that played the game. World of Warcraft for me is a gigantic level of dopamine because mostly they did everything right. So the loot itself felt good because you're like trying to get a certain drop, and it's not what was the drop and the RNG of it. It's did I get that certain drop, and which means you have to go kill a boss in order to acquire that certain drop. So you have a percentage of like the dopamine of did it drop or not. But then you have to go experience a boss, and then the bosses in World of Warcraft were good and unique enough that the mechanics were actually fun, which means you had to get other players in order to defeat the boss instead of just doing everything literally by yourself. And then the other players actually had a role in which they have to like heal you or be the tank to make sure the boss is only attacking you because you're the only one strong enough to take a hit. Like there's so many levels to the basic concepts of that game that everything intrinsically makes you actually need to function in the living world. Whereas the reason Diablo 4 I can't give an S tier on the same level as World of Warcraft is because Diablo 4 is a Diablo game, which means you're going to go out in a really well-themed art world. You're going to smash some loot, but I have no reason at any point to play with any player. I have no reason at any point to think about any other types of class that maybe can buff other types of class. There's no interaction in it. And then it's not it's not at the level of social dynamics that I like to see in a video game that really makes me put it in S tier. You see, I think Diablo 2 fairly gets an S tier in this because everyone overwhelmingly seems to think they got the balance of what's the most important thing in Diablo correctly, which is the items. It seems like everyone says Diablo 2 items feel good, the RNG is hard, etc. But it's balanced correctly. Whereas I feel like most people agree Diablo 3 and Diablo 4 kind of didn't get the dopamine levels right. And over the years, maybe it's rose-colored glasses, etc. But it seems like people go back to the staple of Diablo 2, and I think Path of Exile is another example of this, that I just hear very often got the balance right and is correct and all of that. But if the loot wasn't like the primary reason these Diablo games are so good, then it wouldn't be weighted as harshly, meaning maybe they would all be A tier for what they are. But because of the reason that the loot for me seems like the most primary reason people are playing the game, it's not like World of Warcraft where we have the social dynamic, and really in any of these games to that level. It's not like Hearthstone where you have this turn-by-turn decision-making process. It's a smash and grab, and the grab is half of smash and grab, right? So when you have the smashing, it better feel good, which all of the Diablos, I feel like all of Diablo's smashing feels good. I would argue Diablo 4 smash actually feels the best, to be honest, which might actually push it towards the S tier. The grab is probably the part most people would agree is more important out of the smash and grab. And for that reason, I think that's why I have the Diablos at that list here today. And I think I'm fairly satisfied with that list at the moment. Let me know what you think about this one, where you think Diablo 4 falls in this list as well. Thanks for watching. If I earned your subscription today, I appreciate it. If not, don't worry about it. Have a great day, and I am live every day, twitch.tv/startmicrotransaction in the pinned comment at 11 a.m. PST.